So I'm Katie Rössler. I'm a transformative grief guide, licensed counselor, and author of the book, The New Face of Grief. So Carly, I'm going to check real quick. Am I on this main screen or are you on main screen now?
You are pinned.
Excellent. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to take a moment, everyone, to close your eyes and think back to when you were younger. What did you want to be when you grew up? Before all of the conditioning around what was a good job to have or not, who you needed to be, all the feedback from teachers, coaches, family members about really what you were set out, the course you were supposed to follow. What or who did you want to be? And I want you to take a moment, open your eyes, and share in the chat, what did you want to be? Or who did you want to be? So I'm a mom of 3 girls. The oldest is 8, and the 8-year-old has decided she wants to be an acrobatic artist, and she is going to hang from ropes upside down and paint, and that's how she'll do her art. And she's going to live on a farm. And so she will have this farm where she takes care of all the animals, and then during the day she will hang upside down and paint. I haven't talked to her about the fact that there'll be a point where she might pass out from it, but she's just so eager and excited to do this thing. And I love it because this is what makes her herself. This is what makes her her authentic warrior. She just wants to hang upside down and paint all day. So we have soldier, lawyer, fashion designer, animator, teacher, and artist. Oh, these are wonderful. Okay. Now, if you're not doing those things, I want you to think back and what changed it all for you. Maybe you wanted to be an astronaut, and then when you started learning about what it took to actually get into space, the grades and requirements and programs, and wow, maybe I'm not so good in math and science like I had hoped I would be, and then all of a sudden you realize that being an astronaut's really not the course you're meant to take. Or maybe you wanted to be a princess like my 5-year-old, and then later you realize that's not really a career path for most of us, right? How did the gap between our dreams and our reality become so big? Yeah, some of it might be a reality check, but what really happened? How were things stretched in that gap? I like to think that we were affected by the messages around us, both direct and indirect, telling us really what we were supposed to do with our lives. Often they were because of other people's wounding and their own issues, and they shaped and affected how we started to see ourselves. It was almost like they told us our purpose should be this to fulfill their needs or to save us from something like disappointment. Can you recall those messages of when things started to shift and it was like, well, maybe I won't be that after all? Were they cultural? Were they within your family? Was it financial reasons or social? Would you have not been accepted had you really followed your path and dream at that age? Let's take a few steps back and really look at what happened before that gap. Now, I want you to imagine that all of us, when we were born, we were these little warriors, authentic, pure, wise, intuitive, strong, and capable. And yet we still had a desire to learn and master the things around us. Can you sense that part of you still? That authentic warrior. Most of us have forgotten this part of ourselves. It's due to the messaging that we received of, don't be this, this is too much, that's too little. People don't like when you do those things. Our little warrior grew up realizing it wasn't okay to be us. They started to forget who they were, what they liked, what they didn't like, what mattered most to them. Years of conditioning following a system in our culture, in our family, in our society, in our education, slowly made that warrior hide even deeper. That authentic warrior within us was no longer allowed to be out and proud and present. Now, I believe as well that there are 4 major false beliefs that get conditioned in us that create this kind of hiding sense of self. These beliefs are ingrained in us from very early on. So before we get into what those false beliefs are, I want to tell you a story. So there was this 6-year-old boy, and he was playing outside of his home with, in America, we say soccer ball, but I live in Germany, so I'm going to say a Fußball or football. And he was kicking it around in his garden. And his dad came out and said, "Hey, make sure you don't kick it too close to the cars. I don't want you to put a dent in the car." Yeah, Dad, okay. But all of a sudden, he has this dream of being this amazing soccer star. And he pulls back and he does the best kick of his life. And the ball hits a car. What happens? There's a dent. His dad hears it and runs outside. "I told you not to do this. Give me the ball. Go inside. Look what you did." And the boy's crying. There goes that dream. Later that night, he's at the dinner table and he reaches across because his mom's got the best dinner rolls. He goes to grab it and he knocks over his milk. And his mom says, "What's wrong with you today? You can't do anything right. No, don't touch anymore. No, you are not allowed to have a roll. Go to your room. I will clean it up and then you can come back." Now, for some of you, this reflection and story might also be an experiences you had growing up. Or if you're a parent, you might know it for your own experiences of being a parent. These childhood ways that we were parented and the parents think that they're helping us actually ended up hurting us over time. So let's talk about these false beliefs, and then we're going to get back to that boy. We get into adulthood, and if we don't sort out these false beliefs and these messages we received early on, they start to negatively impact us. So I want you to take a look at this graph, if it will work for me. There we go. Oh, and I want you to think about the ABCs. A is an activating event. It could be anything from, as you saw, a partner not taking out the trash, or somebody says something to you that really upsets you. Think of the buzzword right now is your trigger. What is it that triggers you? What annoys you, angers you, frustrates you? Okay. Then we have C, which is the consequences. This is the things that end up happening because we've been triggered. We get angry, we cry, we get reactive, we stonewall, we beat ourselves up, we start to go and eat, we start to spend money, we go through whatever other addiction we might have. This activating event from 0 to 100 hits and we react. But there's something going on inside, in between. And of course, we know there's got to be a B, right? Okay. So I'm going to use an example because here in Europe, I tend to do couples therapy, and this is a universal experience. Your partner doesn't take out the trash after you've requested multiple times that they take out the trash. Will you please take out the trash? And you refuse to be the one to do it. That's the activating event. What happens then when you go and look at the trash and you realize, not only did my partner not take out the trash, but I see there's trash on top of the trash that I know they put there. So that enrages you even more. You know, the funny thing is this is not a gender specific example because I've had clients on both sides experience this. So the consequences, they become angry, passive aggressive, hurt, yelling, bitter. It continues to fuel problems within their relationship. So what's actually going on? What's that B? Well, I believe it's false beliefs. These belief systems, again, that were conditioned in us from a very young age. There are 4 key ones. A fear of failure. We can't make mistakes. There is nothing about accidents. No, it's all failure. A fear of rejection. I will be alone. Nobody will love me. I won't be wanted. A fear of punishment. I could lose my job. I could get in trouble for this. Or a fear of shame and guilt. I don't feel worthy. What if they see the real me? I don't think my value is of what they pay me for. So I want you to think about, if this situation happened to you, which of these arrows would you be pointing at? Would it be the fear of punishment? Would it be the fear of shame and guilt? Would it be the fear of failure or rejection? In this situation, I played it out with fear of rejection and fear of punishment. My partner must not really love me or care. Maybe he's just totally checked out. Maybe he doesn't care. So what does that mean about me? Well, I don't want him to see me vulnerable, so I'm going to react in anger. Or maybe he's getting me back for something I did wrong the other day. I mean, I didn't mean to do it. I know it upset him, but I didn't mean to. And then all of a sudden, our fear of punishment is kicked up. What would it have been for you? Write in the comments. Which of these fears would have been kicked up because your partner didn't take out the trash? And again, if you know this scenario, it might be easy to pick it out. Is it a fear of maybe I'm not communicating clearly? Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe I'm not taking care of things correctly. That fear of failure. Maybe he doesn't love me or she doesn't love me. Fear of rejection. Maybe they're getting back at me for something I did. Fear of punishment. Maybe I'm not worthy of being listened to or cared about. Fear of shame and guilt. So if you're comfortable, please share in the comments. Which of these false beliefs would it have been for you? Fear of rejection, fear of failure, rejection. It's very high in relationships. That rejection is clearly one of those things. Over time, we develop coping mechanisms to counteract these. Like I said, well, no, I'm going to get defensive and reactive. I don't want you to know that I've been hurt. I don't want you to see me vulnerable. Or we lead down the path of addiction, reactivity, doom scrolling on our phones to avoid how we're actually feeling, just escaping. It shifts further and further from our authentic warrior and become someone that doesn't have a sense of identity and personality. It's like we become this false sense of us. As we lose ourselves, something I like to call hidden grief starts to get kicked up and become stronger. It's not grief related to death. It's the grief related to the changes in life, not being parented the way we would have wanted to, being impacted by endings of relationships, health issues that come up that we didn't expect, moving. I'm an expat here in Germany, and that move rocked me. It rocked my husband, who was moving back to his home country. All of it created grief. Now, let's go back to that little boy, and I want you to think, which of the false beliefs would apply to him? What did he experience? Because he kicked the ball, there was that fear of failure that he was taught. He was made to go inside, away from his dad, and also later from his mom. He got in trouble for what he was doing. And there was something inherently wrong with him. What's wrong with you? Why can't you do anything right? We all gravitate towards one or two of these. In order to release our authentic warrior, we have to undergo an amazing journey of grief work that helps us decondition each of these false beliefs. And these are only 4. There's many more. These drive us to hide our authentic selves, that warrior within. And again, I'm not talking about grief related to death. Our society has started to realize and wake up over the last 3 years to grief. It's actually a natural and normal process in life. We were just conditioned to believe it's a bad thing that we want to hide from. And this is something that we can start to change within ourselves. By doing the grief work, learning how to forgive ourselves and others, and deconditioning these false beliefs, slowly but surely, we can finally allow our authentic warrior to step out every day without fear. So are you ready to take the journey? I'd love to hear if you have any questions from today's talk. I know we're short on time, as we only have about 20 minutes for this whole talk, but maybe you've got some questions about these false beliefs or how to start working on grief work, and I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we've got about 7 minutes actually to speak and answer questions. And you also can just put comments in the chat as well if you'd like, Katie, to just know something, if you'd like to share something with the fellow attendees, go ahead and do that.
And I have my connection screen. If you would like to get connected after this, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. If you'd like to access my book, The New Face of Grief, I'd love to hear from you. If after this talk, you're like, now I need to ask some questions, here's how you get in touch with me.
I think that while we're waiting for people to drop things in the chat, I've sat in quite a few talks, and this is definitely one of the first that have been in a completely different realm of creativity. And I think that it's so refreshing, the openness and the honesty that this specific talk brings to such a taboo topic that shouldn't necessarily be taboo, but it definitely opens up the space to be vulnerable and, you know, have conversations about things that as a society people don't necessarily feel comfortable speaking upon in daily life. So thank you for that.
Thank you. You are completely right, because again, we're conditioned to think falsely that grief is not normal. It's nobody died. Why are you grieving? And yet it's impacts our creativity, it impacts our work, it impacts how we show up in life. Yeah.
That's beautiful. We have a few comments in the chat.
Yeah.
Karen has asked, do you have any certification programs, do you have any certification programs you offer for some of your work? And then there was another comment that says, is grief not just about death? How does it influence my creativity? Which I feel like
good question.
You could wrap.
We can, yeah. Okay.
back
So
to
very
that.
first one, yes, I do teach other coaches and clinicians and those who work with people in such a way that they want to learn how to address hidden grief. And there is a certification program that I do. It's called the Legacy Growth Certification Program. You can find that on my website. So you see that here on the screen. And how does grief is not just about death. How does it influence my creativity? Well, because you cannot show up as your authentic self, you're creating art from a place of what you think you should do or what you think others will accept you from. So being really mindful of where your creativity is coming and what's driving it. And as you start to question what's driving it, what are you willing to decondition so that you can really heal that grief and be able to create authentic pieces of work, you know, whether it be music, art, experience, dance, movement, all of it.
We have a few more comments. Let's see. Karen also wants to know, when is the next intake?
Oh, so we're going to start again the end of September. It's going to be 4 months over the fall. Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Brian left a comment. He said, I'm just having a hard time identifying the specific fear that links to my separation from my young, authentic warrior. Can you maybe provide a sentence about each fear?
Do we have time for that? Because
yes,
if not,
yes,
then Brian, I'll give you my email.
You have 4 minutes if that's enough time for
yeah.
you.
Okay, Brian. So fear of failure is around perfectionism. I'm afraid if I do this, it won't be right. It's that mindset of mistakes can't happen, and that failure doesn't lead to anything good. Well, I mean, hello, look at the light bulb. We're really glad that there were a lot of things that didn't work because tweaks were able to be made to create the light bulb, right? Most of us needed to make a lot of mistakes along the way. And sometimes people like to use the word failures happen so that we could grow into ourselves. But often that authentic warrior has to be masked by this perfectionist side. Then we have the fear of rejection. If I do something and people don't like it, I will be left alone. And there'll be something, in a sense, wrong with me. So that feeling of I have to people please, I have to do what others want or what they will accept me for. And then all of a sudden, we're kind of leading a path towards what others want versus what we really want. Then when we look at fear of punishment, it's that constant, like, am I going to lose my job for this? Am I not going to get that new position? And, you know, is this not going to work out? Will I not get paid for this? It creates this like fight or flight constantly within us of thinking we're getting punished. And it actually leads us to have a lot of anger issues. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen those people who play board games and as soon as they know they start losing, they get like really negative and like blah about it. It's like we get that way in life. And then the last one, that fear of shame and guilt, what I see impacting people in their authentic warrior is about the value of their services, what they're willing to charge for things, what starts to happen is they also say, well, I'm not worthy of this. Maybe people will not accept me, or if they knew all of me, if they knew all of the things. So we put on this persona of, I've got it all together, everything's perfect, instead of being authentic. And that warrior side, we always have this image of like a fighter, but truly a warrior is just someone who stands firm and can go through life and experiences scars, but doesn't have to go, look at this scar, look at that scar. They're able to just stand firmly with their scars and know that that shaped who they are. So hopefully that helped Brian.
He actually has a secondary question. We don't have much time,
Okay.
but he said, would it be safe to say that if my parent reassigned my dream to my sibling, that I would probably mix failure and rejection?
Yeah. And probably a sense of worthiness. Was I not worthy enough to do this, whatever dream it was? Yeah.
The last question, I think this is a good thing to wrap up on. Is your book available online?
It is. It's both ebook and paperback. You can get on Amazon. All online bookstores are covering it. And then end of September, I'll have a second book for mothers on giving birth to motherhood, how to write your birth story for therapeutic reasons.